And we are live. Hi, everybody. And hi, Lillian and Sophie and Tamara. Thank you so much for joining today's panel. I'm so excited for today's live. I can't even tell you. We have 5 people on. Um, Hello, thank you for joining. Feel free to drop in the chat, where you're joining us from because we're all over different parts of the world, I think, a little bit. Sophie and Lillian and Tamara, too. So thank you so much for joining. Today's Indie Author Live Chat is about how to use book boxes and book promos as an indie author specifically, and we have a amazing panel. We have in no particular order, and I'll let each of you sort of introduce yourselves and tell us more about what you do. But we have Lillian on, who is a PR coach. She does a little bit of everything, honestly, is a huge part of the indie author community. We have Sophie, who is Beware of the Reader on Instagram and also has a blog, who has over 12,000 followers, and is a rep for like Fairy Loot and some other boxes too, right, Sophie?
Yes, yes.
And then we have Tamara with the Nerdy Book Box, who is very popular in the community and features some indie authors in her sets too, and not just traditional. Most recently, my friend Katrina Lewis, who did Heavy as the Head, was featured in a Nerdy Book Box tour, and the sprayed edges were gorgeous. I just loved it. So thank you all for joining. Why don't we go around? Tamara, we'll start with you and we'll just sort of go counterclockwise. If you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do before we jump into the panel.
Yes. So, hi, my name is Tamara, and I am the owner and founder of Nerdy Book Box. We started back in August 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, actually. And we exclusively feature indie authors, not traditionally published authors, just indie. And we're coming up on our second year of business, right, this August. So I think that's it.
Yay! Congratulations. And I didn't know you were exclusively indie. I'm sorry for getting that wrong.
You're good.
And Sophie, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Bookstagram and your blog?
Yes, of course. So I decided to begin a blog 5 years ago because I wanted to learn the technology because I'm older than your average book blogger when you begin, or older than your average bookstagrammer, which are around 20, 30, but I'm over 50 now. And I wanted to master the technology, so I began with book blogging, and also because I'm really passionate about books. And as you can hear now, I'm French speaking, but I wanted to keep my master of English. So I thought writing about books was a very good way to keep up on top of my game. And then later on, I began to try Bookstagram because an author organized a giveaway. And to enter her giveaway, we had to have an Instagram account. So I opened Instagram and I began with a very bad photo at the beginning. But then I found it a very, very good way to express my creativity because when I was young, I wanted to work for Walt Disney. I'm not working for Walt Disney at all, but it was a good mean to express my creativity. And then I really liked it, and I met fantastic people on Bookstagram, like-minded people, and that's my story so far.
That's awesome. And I love that even though you're not working for Disney, you're still making the magic happen. If anybody
I
watches
try
Sophie's videos,
to, as you can
they're
see
amazing.
also in my reels, that's a little bit of magic and a little bit of fantasy.
Hmm. And Lillian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, Catherine. Thanks for having me here, everybody. I am a PR coach and publicist. I've been in the publicity game for 9 years now, and I started working with authors on publicity because originally I started out with social media and copywriting, and I got tired of telling great folks no when they asked me if I offered publicity services. So, in addition to working with authors on campaigns, as a coach, I offer coaching sessions, an 8-week coaching program, and my in depth PR course to help authors who want to learn and get educated on how to make PR work for them, and also push past some of the limiting beliefs in order to learn how to use the right tools to make it successful for them. And in the last handful of years, it's been really gratifying to me to see a lot of authors take that step and really learn how to make it use it for their books, and just get successful with it, and understand that it's an intrinsic part of marketing that they can learn how to make work for them, and it's not as scary as they think it is.
Yeah. And Lillian is, like I said, a huge part of the Instagram author community. I see her sharing about people's new releases all the time, even people who are not working with her or have taken her course. And one of the things that I love about all three of our guests today is they are all so supportive and encouraging toward authors and to readers, and encouraging that connection between the two. So I see we've got a couple people on. We've got Luna on. Hi, Luna. We have,
Vanna.
double click. Giovanna
Hi, Vanna.
on. Hi. So yeah, we have some questions already that we have got pulled up, and what we're going to do today is go through different aspects of how to be an indie author and promote your books, how to be an indie author, and specifically work with book boxes, because that is one of the biggest, I guess it feels like one of the biggest obstacles when you're an indie author and you see all the beautiful books and you see all the beautiful merch. And I've seen more and more people talk about, I want to make a book box. And then we also brought Sophie on, because Sophie, being a rep and loving good books and loving good book merch, has just a treasure trove of knowledge of what a reader is looking for. Because ultimately, we're not doing this as much for the money as we're doing it to connect with readers and see them love our world and see them love the books we've put out. So we've got a huge mix of questions. Some are directed to specific people. And as we go through, if you have questions and you're watching, please drop them in the chat. We're doing this live so we can talk to you guys. So we'll start with what I hope might be an easier one. There's a lot about preparing to publish, but at what stage preparing to publish should authors book their book tours and inquire about book boxes? And if you're a new author and you're like, I don't know what a book tour is, I don't know what a book box is, book boxes are usually on subscription, although you can buy them one-off too, depending on the company, and they come with a book and merch around a similar theme or around that book. A book tour would be, my new book is coming out, and different people are posting about it, either reviews or release dates or things like that. So Lillian, let's start with the tour. How far before your book is published should you start booking book tours?
I always counsel authors to say, if you have even, say, a tentative date, let's say you have a month or a season, you go, I want to release in July. Okay, you have that tentative schedule, work backwards from it to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time. So what do I mean by that? When you're reaching out to reviewers, you're reaching out to, say, do podcast interviews. You might be reaching out to do event collaborations with other authors. You want to make sure that you're giving them enough time to respond, give yourself enough time to send them everything that they need. So copies of the book, any images, all of that sort of thing, so they can promote it properly. And you also want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to schedule everything and have it basically work out, because when you're doing a tour, you don't want to, say, do one event and have nothing for 3 weeks, right? So if you have a tentative date, July, let's say work back 6 to 8 weeks, what does that schedule look like? Who do I want to review my book? Who do I want to reach out to? How many people am I looking to do events or do reviews with, so that I can have, kind of an organized schedule around it, and also helps you to organize how you're going to promote it. on social media, through email, on your website, whatever it is that you're doing, you want to have a clear schedule so your audience knows on a weekly basis, this is what you're up to, this is who's talking about your book. And if it's an event, giving your audience enough time to go, oh, I need to go catch that live. Or, oh, if it's up, you've done an interview and it's been recorded and it's now live, oh, I need to go listen to that, or I need to watch that, right? So key to looking at a launch, I mean, you can do research at any time as soon as you start thinking about it, but actually planning to book things, minimum, I tell people you need to give yourself at least 6 to 8 weeks, because everybody's schedule's different. You want to respect people's time, and you want to make sure if there's key people you want on this launch tour, that you're locking them in nice and early.
That's right. And Tamara, you do book promo tours as well, beyond just, reviews. When I did The Vow That Twisted Fate, I'm super thankful to you and your team for doing the release tour, telling people, hey, here's this new book and it's out. And there weren't people necessarily had read and reviewed it, but it just got the word out there. As a first time author, that was huge for me. So how early do you ask people to start looking at scheduling with you or similar companies that do similar services?
Yes, so we normally ask, I have a team right now of 3 people that help me with the book tours. It's Shia, Tony, and Renee, and they basically handle all the scheduling. Shia is my lead. She handles all the scheduling, and we normally go 2 to 3 months in advance, a little bit more if people want to do the review tour, and that's just because it gives people a chance to read the book and put the review together. So those are the ones that take longer, but spotlight features or like 1-day blitzes or cover reveals, normally at least 1 to 2 months ahead, normally 2. Right now we're scheduling out to July, I think, May or July. So we like to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah. And Sophie, we got one that was really close tied in there specifically to you. And it was, if I'm going to reach out to an influencer to ask them to read my book, how far in advance should I ask them?
I would say personally at least 2 months ahead, if possible, because I have to book the advanced reading copy in my schedule. I'm a big mood reader, so I don't accept a lot of advanced reading copy because I have to be in the right mood, in the right mind frame, I would say, to read it. Otherwise, it's a disservice to the book and to the author. So I'd say personally, 2 months in advance is ideal for me. I know you have some influencers or book bloggers that are reading machine and they don't mind being on a tight schedule and yes, and having one arc after another. But I'm not that. I'm not any longer that type of reader.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. It's sort of know the influencer as an author, and being a newer author, I obviously will bow to whatever advice you 3 give. But what I've found myself is you want a connection with these influencers. These are not people that you're just like, hey, read my book to do this for me. These should be people that are a part of your community and you know them, you talk to them, ideally before you show up and go, hey, jump in their inbox. My name is so and so, read my book, which is a newbie thing that I sort of wish I had known when I started. But you live and you learn. So try to take some time to research influencers that read your genre, and then make sure that you follow them a little while and make sure that the people who are engaging with them are actually your readers before you
Yes.
ask them.
Yes, and there is a mean to ask for it, because I sometimes, I would say, wild messages letting me know, okay, this is my new book, read it, and link to Amazon, or I don't know. And no, that's not how you ask someone.
Yeah. And this is sort of funny to me because actually, when I was getting ready to look for reviewers for Val, I did message Sophie, but I had been following Sophie for like a month. I was sort of new on Instagram, and I got to learn a whole lot just following her after that. I didn't know anything about how long you should do in advance. And like many authors, I think maybe I was in a rush. I got my book. I want to put it out as quickly as possible. Instead of saying, hey, if you put it off 6 months, if you put it off a year, you can add all these other tools to your release that you can't do if you've finished your draft and you put it out tomorrow. So we have a question on the live. The difference between an indie author and an indie book. The indie author writes the book, and the book is what we write. It means self-published or published by an independent press, as opposed to signed by like Random House and paid royalties. We handle all of our own editing, all of our own marketing. Some of us might hire out some help or might bring on personal assistants, but for the majority of us, we handle all that responsibility ourselves. And that also means in the case that we're talking about today, book boxes and book tours, that we would be in charge of sourcing that stuff, connecting with book boxes that accept non-traditionally published authors, and making sure our books are up to the standard that the subscribers of those boxes are ultimately looking for, which is the whole point of today's live. Good question. All right, so talking about launch tours, what is a reasonable fee to pay, and how do you know when they are scammers? This is a big one, because if you're an author on Instagram very long at all, you're going to get the, hi, I'm a promoter and you can pay me to leave a review for your book on Amazon, which is huge red flags, because Amazon terms of service is like, you cannot pay for a review. So, how much do you pay? How do you know it's legit? Tamara, you want to start on this one?
Let's see. So our book tour specifically, we don't charge. Right now, it's a free service. So I think that just allows people with smaller budgets to be able to do it. And honestly, I'll be honest, I've never encountered like a scammer. I think I've seen them more on Facebook, like in those indie groups, and they're just like, message me and you'll get XYZ. But I think unless it's a reputable company like Storygram Tours or TLC Book Tours, and that they're actually doing tours, I would just not trust anybody outside of those big groups, because, these people have a reputation for a reason, not some random dude on the internet. But that would be, like you said, those are red flags when people are just like, here, let me take some of your money to do stuff. No, who are you? But that would be how I would approach it anyways.
Lillian, what do you think, having been in the PR, being in the marketing side, what should an author prepare to pay a legitimate company?
Well, at the end of the day, when we're talking about things like PR budgets, which can include, working with book review companies and that, it really comes down to, because the budget it runs the gamut. Like for me, when I talk to clients about like what are your goals specifically, when they work with me, it's, are you looking to learn how to do it? Do you want that personalized support to learn how to do it? Or is it one of those things where it's like, hey, you know what? I really don't have time to take on the education component right now. Can you work with me to do it properly so that moving forward, I have an idea of what that looks like, right? So it really comes down to what your goals are. And with that, to Tamara's point, it's really about doing research, because there's so many people that will claim different things out there, and you need to be able to look into them and go, okay, can they actually back this up with testimonials, with just a general history of having success of doing this sort of thing? Because at the end of the day, there's price points all over the place when it comes to marketing and PR, but it's about, okay, what do I want to do ultimately? And when we're talking about timelines here, 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, what are my goals for my book and for my business as an author? And ultimately, how do I want to achieve this? Because if cost is the only thing you're looking at, what can happen is you can get into a spiral where, okay, this person's the cheapest of the cheap, but they don't do what it is that they tell you they were going to do. And what happens there is then you don't have a recourse. What is your recourse? You're just giving them that money and you're not seeing the return on investments. So it really comes down to what it is that you want to do. And when we were talking about timelines earlier, I've noticed that there is this prevalent myth that says if you don't do all these things for launch, it's too late. If you wait a couple months and your book's already out there, it's too late. Well, I've had great success helping clients get interviews, get the reviews months, sometimes a year after their book's been published, because I look at it this way. Your audience is always growing and changing. The people that were with you during launch may not be the same people who find your book 3 months, six months down the road. So when you keep that momentum going, it's like, hey, I'm still doing tours, I'm still doing interviews, I'm still doing events. You increase your chances at not only building these relationships, which is what all of this is about, is building these relationships. You increase your chances of meeting and making connections with new audiences, right? So I think it really comes down to what your goals are and how you want to go about building those relationships. Cost is not the only thing you should be looking at there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would definitely say I've launched a book without paying for a single review, without paying for a single promo. I do not pay for promotions. I do not pay for reviews. I am super humble and thankful for the readers who are on my street team and who are on my advanced reader copy team. They are more valuable than I could ever say. So it is possible to do the research like Lillian and Tamara said and find legitimate companies and do this yourself, but you have to have the time to do it. Again, so tied into that, when it comes to influencers, a question we got for you is, should I tip influencers who help with my books? Which I thought was interesting because I had actually never thought about that.
I have learned some month ago that on TikTok, you pay people to review your books and to promote your books, so influencers. That's not something that's done on Instagram, for example. So that's totally different. And I know that some people are angry about it. Personally, I would feel ill at ease to be paid to write a review. Because when I began my blog, I swore to myself to be always honest with my review, because I'm writing my review first for the readers and not for the authors. Now, I also promise to be always respectful, because I'm persuaded that you can tell that you disliked the book and still be respectful and try to see who would like that book, because reading is a personal experience. It depends on your taste. Maybe it depends on your state of mind at that time. So if you paid me to review, I would feel tired and nearly obligated to write a positive review, or I would feel very uncomfortable if I didn't like the book and I had to write a negative review while I got paid for it. But that's my personal opinion, of course. I know that people would love to get paid to read a book. Also, being an international reader and bookstagrammer, we have few physical copies of books, advanced reading copies or already finished copies. So for me, what's more important, and what I ask now, if someone requests a review for me and to post on Bookstagram, I ask the real deal. I ask a physical copy. That's more valuable for me, because I can't take a beautiful picture with an ebook. That's not just me. I don't like it. I can promote a cover reveal with some, I would say, some Photoshop cover and sound, because I work with Photoshop, so I know how to do it. But if someone asks me to review a book, I want to have a physical copy. And for an international blogger, that's gold. That's better than getting paid, in fact. because that's very difficult to have a physical copy as an international reader.
Mm-hmm. And if you're an author, because I did send international copies of Vow out, that's a challenge that you have to think about how you're going to overcome. And I struggled with it with Vow. I won't do it the same way. I put the book up as a soft release on Amazon, and then I bought it through Amazon to have Amazon deliver it because it was cheaper to do it that way than it was to pay the shipping, to like print them, send them to myself, and send them off. If I do it again, though, I probably won't do a soft release, because then that soft release date stays on your book and it makes copyright and all that stuff difficult. I'd probably do personal copies, which you can do through Barnes & Noble, you can do through Amazon. And if you do it through Amazon, you can send personal copies to whatever address you want to. So that's something to think about too. But yeah, so that's a great tip. And then, of course, always keeping in mind that Amazon's terms of service are very clear. So if somebody's going to be review, they can't leave a review in exchange for money.
No.
Or they'll take the review down. There have been authors that have lost whole pre-orders because they found out that, hey, they had paid reviews. So yeah, just better to steer clear of that. But I definitely agree. If you have a physical copy of your book, that's hey, I'll give you a nice physical copy. It just seems like the least you can do. Okay, so moving on with our questions. We've got one on YouTube, and then the others I'm looking at on my phone. Vanity Press. I won't go too much into that on this panel because it's sort of outside the realm of this. I did put a link to how much does it really cost to self-publish a book in the comments, and that does touch on hybrid publishing, or what some people call vanity publishing. Basically, if you're self-publishing and you want another company to coordinate everything for you, there are companies that do that for varying prices. Vanity presses are typically presses that charge way more than it would ever cost you to do it yourself. So if it cost me $3,000 to put out a book, a vanity press might charge me $12,000 to $15,000, and they're basically profiting big time off of a author just not knowing what to do, and therefore that stigma of a vanity press. But not all presses that coordinate services are vanity presses. So if you want to see all the details on that, you can watch the other video. All right, so as far as book boxes go, getting into the book box side, Tamara, do authors pay to have their books put in book boxes, or are they paid by book boxes? How does that work?
So they definitely don't pay. And I've had some people actually, how much does it cost to get into the box? And no, you don't pay to get into the box. You submit your information. We have a form on our website on author resources, and you can submit your information, and basically it goes to our database. We have over 300 authors who have submitted their information, and every year we are constantly reviewing the books, trying to see what fits better into our genres, etc. We buy the books from the authors. Now, obviously we buy them wholesale, but sometimes authors will add a little bit there so they can make some money, but they don't pay. We pay them to buy their books, and then we curate all the items, and we pay for all the curated items and everything. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, that's good to know. So like so many other things in the self-publishing industry, there are red flags to watch for. So I would say if somebody says, pay me $1,000 and I'll put your books in a book box, maybe you look at other book boxes.
I would be scared.
An enamel pin maker messaged me a few months ago, and they're like, we love the Ballot Twisted Fate, and we want to make Talon and Elsie and Arla pins. And I looked them up, legit company. They've done pins for like Holly Black and Lee Bardugo and some other characters, and I was like, your pins are beautiful, I'd be honored. Send me over whatever you need so I can sign off the license. Well, they came back and they're like, oh, well, because you're indie, it'll be $750 per design. I was like, yeah, no. And I was like, okay, so y'all are gonna sell the pins to your fans with my designs, but I'm paying you. Do I any kickback on that? And they were like, no. And I was like, no thanks. I'm not interested in that.
I'll do them for
So
free.
just yeah, I'll let you have the characters for free, even if I don't get any money off of it, because that's exposure, and I'm a brand new author, and that's great. But I'm not going to pay you to make money off of my characters. So just watch for that stuff. Okay, let's see. Going through the rest of our questions. Hey, Montrez, good to have you on. She says she's able to tune in today. Good to see you. All right, Sophie, should authors ask influencers to read their books before or after a launch? And what is the key etiquette that you wish authors knew when they were asking?
I would say it depends. Both are good for me. As Lillian said, you can either promote your book at the launch of the book or when the book is already published. So I'd say for me, both are valid. If you ask for launch, as I said earlier, you have to ask beforehand to give us time to read the book and to review and to read it when we feel like reading that book and that type of story. If it's after launch, then we have less pressure, of course, because we don't have time frame to read the book, so that's better. The etiquette they should follow, I would say, ask nicely, not say, read my book, here is my link, because that won't work with me. To give us the opportunity to say no, because I had to learn to say no, because I know that author, because I helped author to write their book for years. I've been a beta reader, really close to some authors, so I edited the book, I beta read the book, so I know that they are sweating, that they are giving their blood to write a book. So I was feeling very uncomfortable saying no at the beginning, but I realized it was, as I said, a disservice to the author or the book, because I couldn't like the book, and so that was not useful. So we have to feel free to say no, because not all people feel that they can say no. So please leave room, ask nicely, and see where it goes. I would also say really target your audience when you ask. For example, I had author asking me to review nonfiction, but I never read nonfiction. Aside Becoming by Michelle Obama, that I adored, I don't read nonfiction. So if you ask someone who does not read your type of story, that won't generally work. So this would be my basic advice. And also, that's more for the PR tour, because in the past I had a bad experience. I had reviewed books for an author, and then later on, the PR company asked us to do the cover reveal, which we did, but they didn't say in advance that it won't come with a possibility of a review copy. And we learned later on that the review copy were only for a small targeted audience, because they thought, okay, these bloggers had very, very big followers, and they were only offered the review copy for these book bloggers. And I found it really, really bad policy, because if you ask me beforehand, would you mind helping me reveal the cover, but there won't be an arc later? No problem for me. I will help if I know the author, if I like the work, if I like the story, the style, no problem. But there I felt cheated. So I would say be transparent, be respectful, and give the opportunity to the people to say no. And if they say no, don't begin unfollowing them because they say no. So I would say that's general, being polite, simply being polite.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You know, people are busy. We only read so many books at a time. And a lot of great tips. Thank you, Sophie. So, we're going to end on the book box note here. We've got 2 last questions plus whatever comes in on the chat. Does an indie author even stand a chance at getting featured in a book box?
Yes, especially mine specifically. We do cater just to indie authors, so in my situation, in Nerdy Book Box's situation, yes, you do have a chance. Like I said, we have over 300 submissions of authors, but we try and look at a lot of different aspects. Is it a newer book? Are the reviews good? The genres and such. So, and actually, right now, we've only been able to feature 12 authors, and we're working on expanding come our second year, and we'll actually be doing young adult and adult boxes. So we'll be able to do 24 authors a year, and that increases the chances of people being featured, because I just felt really bad. Hey, it's only 12 people. Like, how can I help more? So come August of this year, that's what we're looking at expanding. We actually haven't even announced it yet. So
Oh, sneak peek.
yeah.
Yes. And I know Lillian might have something to add here too. I'll say from
Yeah,
the author side,
it's actually.
research these companies.
Mhm.
Because I
Yeah.
looked at a couple and they were like, oh, these are really good. But when I went to submission, there's a really small note that I really wish had been like up at the top. There's a really small note after I filled out the whole screen, and at the bottom it's like, under no circumstances will we accept self-published books. And I was like,
Mm,
oh. And they're still great boxes, and I love them, and if I could afford it, I would get them. But it's just nice to know before you fill it out, look at the whole screen and make sure that there is no, we don't do indie. But Lillian, aside from Nerdy Book Box, who we have here, do indie authors stand a chance against, like, of getting a book box feature?
Oh, I absolutely believe so because book boxes, I think, so many authors tend to focus on, with good reason, your major bookstores, right? Your bricks and mortar local indie bookstores and doing author signings and stuff like that. Book boxes are a fantastic online distribution method that they can use to really reach international audiences in addition to, like, online bookstores. I really think that it is, because there's so many out there. It's not just Owl Crate and really big guys like that who can, who have enough market share for you to reach the audience, but because a book box is kind of a limited window kind of distribution opportunity. Like Tamara, I think you guys carry each book for a month, right? So is it like, you have to really look at, like, okay, if I get in, what are some of the activities I can use to help promote that and let people know that it's available through this distribution method? One of the addendum questions I actually had for you, Tamara, is that because there's so many different book boxes out there and you're getting so many author submissions, how much does the author being a fan of your book box and regularly interacting with you and engaging with you and promoting your content factor into, okay, they're also the right genre, okay, I think their sales are doing well? How much does that relationship and their willingness to promote you even before they get in the door with you play into, okay, we're going to accept this person for this month? Because that's been something I've been wondering, given how many book box subscription services there are out there, and certainly clients that are looking at getting into more of that type of distribution model, how that plays into it.
Yes. So we try not to play favorites. We do look at the bigger picture. Just because somebody is promoting us or like sharing a lot, we're not gonna be like, hey, yeah, we're gonna go with you instead of the person who's been sitting in the queue for months and months. We definitely don't try and play favorites. We have to look at the big picture. So we have to again look at yes, do one of the aspects of choosing an author is do they have a big following? Would they be able to help us grow? There's mutual benefit here, et cetera, et cetera. But we try not to play favorites, especially now that we're growing more and slowly but surely we're getting up there. We try and stay neutral. So we look at the basis and then we make our decision based off that.
That's great. I think too, authors, we get focused on our writing, and we have to remember that these book boxes are for our readers. And yes, a lot of us authors also get the boxes because we are readers too, and we love them. But really, it's where is the market looking right now? What are they looking for? Would be something I'd imagine too, and that plays into our last pre-submitted question. I know we have one in the chat that we'll get to as well. Um, Sophie, what are BookBox subscribers looking for? Like, what is it that you see in a box that sets a box apart beside, the pens and the beautiful books? What would make you go, wow, if an indie author was to build their own box?
Honestly, if we are talking about the book, I would say, and that's shallow, the look. So if the book is customized, for example, you have stenciled edges, you have a unique cover, you have art on the reverse of the jacket, you have foiling on the hardback. So it's really the look. Of course, we don't buy only for the look, but you asked for a wow. The wow will come first for the look of the book. It will play a huge role for me. 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote an article based on facts and trying to express how a cover is very, very important in buying a book. I think people decide between seconds because there are thousands, 10,000, 100,000 new books a year on the market. And you will first react when you see it, oh, wow. Then, of course, you have your friends, you have the hype and so on. But the first reaction, the gut reaction or the heart reaction is always with how a book will look. Of course, if it's an author you've already read, even if it's an indie author, because I also read indie author, I will trust the author. I will also buy the box. But if it's a brand new author, I would say really the look. That's maybe shallow, but I think that's how 90% of the reader work here. So it will be first the look and then how it's marketed. And you have to be careful because if you say, okay, that's perfect for fans of Sarah J. Maas, for the Cruel Prince, Akutar, so Holly Black, Sarah J. Maas, and so on, you better have to be true to your words. So it's a double-edged, I would say, tool, how you market it. I would react also on tropes. So how the book box will market the book with tropes, because for example, my favorite tropes are found family. I read a lot of fantasy, so lost hair, for example, and so on. Or you have, in romance, you have enemies to lovers, or one bed, and all that you can think about. I think for me, these are the two most important things, the look and the tropes, how you sell your book, how it comes across to the readers.
Definitely.
And then, of course, when you are talking about a book box in general, it will be, of course, the fandom and the merch. And I would really say I prefer less items, but of good quality, than a lot of items that are some only postcard and stickers or pens for me. Okay, you can have postcards. I really appreciate good fan art and good art print, because I'm also amazed and I follow some artists on Bookstagram, but I'm more impressed with the quality of the merch inside a box than the quantity of the merch inside a box.
Absolutely. And Tamara, what pieces of merch do you see a lot of success with in your boxes? Because I know it's like the standard. I've seen socks, I've seen posters, I've seen stickers, I've seen tons of art cards and enamel pins. What do you think your readers are really looking for in theirs?
Mugs and candles. I guess so. Candles, more money. Candles, and like, guys, I can't do that every month.
You can work with flicker wicks.
Oh my, yes,
it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, if I could do it, like, we can't do candles during the summer because they'll melt. I actually have them melt, especially I'm in Southern California. It's hot. It's hot right now. So it's like, I can't do candles every month, y'all. I can't.
There's just something about book candles. Like I got Novel Candle Company that made candles for Val when I put it out, 3 different ones. And I'm like, it's so beautiful and I love it so much. But as I'm getting ready to do more books, I'm like, I'm going to have a candle. If I have a candle for every book, I'm going to have way too many candles in my house.
Yep.
It's an addiction.
Yes. So we have one last question from the chat, and I really appreciate you guys hanging with me because I know we've gone a little longer than most of our Indie Author live chats, but you have been fantastic, and this information has been so great. Lillian, from a PR standpoint, if you were given a new author and your top 3 suggestions on what steps to take headed toward release, what would they be and why?
Renee, this is a phenomenal question. Thank you for sending that through. Top 3 suggestions, I would say number 1, figure out what your goals are, because that's going to directly impact the strategy that you want to build. So things like, are you looking for more business development opportunities? Do you want to be featured in more workshops or do conference panels? Because that's thought leadership, and thought leadership and business development is very different from building a straight media strategy where you're getting interviews and reviews to sell more of your books. So determining what your goals are will directly impact the strategy that you build. And with that, you have to really look at positioning. And I say this to authors all the time. What you do is not unique, because there are thousands of authors who write in your genre. What makes you unique is how you do it and why you do it. So get introspective, people. Think about what inspired you to write this book. Why did you become an author? What are the themes that you put into your book, and why do they matter to you? What is it that you want audiences to get out of that? And when you have that foundation, then doing the research to find the right people that you want to reach out to, whether it's getting more distribution opportunities, like talking to someone like Tamara, getting reviews when you talk to someone like Sophie, or, building up your confidence with interviews by getting into genre-specific podcasts. All of that stuff becomes 100 times easier when you know, these are my goals. This is what I want to do with it 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road. I'm confident in my positioning. This is why I became the author that I am. This is why I wrote the book that I wrote. And these are the themes that I put in there because it's important to me. It becomes so much easier to reach out to the right people because your messaging is solid. So it comes down to your goals, your strategy, and your positioning.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Lillian and Tamara and Sophie, so much. We chat all the time. Lillian and Sophie, I am just involved on your Instagram, and I love the nerdy book boxes so much, Tamara. So this has been a huge pleasure to have you all on the live. I really, really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been a very interesting experience, and I loved meeting you all. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you're watching and you don't know anything about me, I'm an author, but I also am doing these indie author live chats and an indie author behind the scenes series. There are 2 different series here on YouTube. One's talking about tools and tips for self-publishing. One is meeting authors, meeting other people in our community like Sophie and like Tamara and like Lillian. We have a live coming up in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I can't say who, but I have some indie authors who have their books in brick and mortar stores who are going to do a live talking about how they got their books into Barnes & Noble as self-published authors. So if you'd like
That's
to get
awesome.
on that and other stuff, subscribe to the channels to get a reminder when it goes live. And then we've got a couple other with different authors talking about how to write male main characters for the current market, how to write female main characters for the current market, including some great LGBTQ rep from authors like Lily Rook. So really excited about that. But thank you all for joining. Oh,
Thank you.
Montrez. Such good info. Thank you for your time. It was such a pleasure. It's nice to have met you all. Well, thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.